Gen AI and drug discovery is going to make, it's going to be a very uh, kind of like paradigm shifting aspect in how molecules are created or how drugs are created. And I think we're in a very exciting time. And we just saw like Recursion doing the ringing the opening bell today at NASDAQ and like calling it as, marking the beginning of the tech bio era and all that. I think all that is very exciting, right? So I think I'm most excited about how there's going to be such a shift in how drugs are developed. And some of these AI driven drugs are already in clinical trials, and it's going to be an exciting to see, how they perform and what that's going to look like. So I really think target identification and accelerating the process of drug discovery. And we can't, I think, as what we can do as human beings, like to fathom, like looking through like millions of compounds to see what would stick, right? I think some of those, it shrinks the timeline. Like some of those could take years and years for us to do it by hand. But with these kind of like Gen AI driven technologies that would accelerate these drug discovery processes to help us find those needle in a haystack or find the best target much quicker in fraction of the time and fraction of the cost to some extent that it would take like some of these shifting it from a traditional process to this AI driven process. So I'm most excited about, and I think the most impact in the life sciences industry that we would see is in around AI drug discovery, around those technologies. But having said that, I think those are the big wins that we hope for with AI. But I think there are so many use cases and so many areas where there could be much quicker wins, be it with data or how we process this data, how we get insights from this data, kind of like what companies like KOGNITIC do, right? Does. And it could also be with certain efficiencies around like research labs. There are so many quicker wins to gain as well, while we're aiming for the big picture with drug discovery and all of that. So, which might take a few years to come through to like, look at reap the benefits of it. But there are so many use cases where, pharma companies and life sciences companies in general are establishing quick wins with how they process data or how they process information.
I think look, I'm not a lab scientist, right? I mean, my background isn't that, but these conversations always make me wonder. In the future, I guess a couple of different things. One is, if you're a scientist and along the path of drug discovery, you have more questions. I would hope that AI empowers you to be able to ask those questions and get answers quicker, right? Just in general, because I would imagine that researchers sit there all the time saying, well, I wish I could better define this, or I wish I understood, this other part of what's happening that isn't quite clear. The secondary part that I really look forward to in what you said with regards to drug discovery is if in the path of, going through the development of the drug that you have, you run into some brick wall, that Gen AI has the ability eventually to suggest here are possible ways for solving that problem, right? That maybe you wouldn't have come up with otherwise. Yeah. Maybe it has the general knowledge of every other researcher and what they've done to kind of find their way around, and all of a sudden those become pathways for finalization of the drug. Those things excite me, out of that as well.
No, that's so true, right? To troubleshoot, like, okay, this didn't work, now what? I think science is generally underlined with so many troubleshooting and like, permutations or paths that you could take or you shouldn't take. And I think, from your point as well, from a scientist point of view, it's really information. What do I do with this information, or what more can I get from this, right? For example, we work a lot with R&D research scientists, and some of their ask, while we talk about, that's what I was mentioning earlier too, like we're talking a lot about these big picture elements or like complex projects that we want to undertake, but sometimes there is a lot to do in, I would call this like simple AI or quick fixes for some of the challenges that exist that could empower scientists to do more. For example, there are tools that are available for scientists to understand the pathways, or when you look at a cancer pathway or a cellular pathway, one molecule binds to another molecule, triggers another downstream signaling reaction, right? So many things happen across various scientists have like interesting questions for us on those contexts where they're like, okay, we're working with company one that has this data, and then we're working with you guys, and you're telling me that this molecule has these trials, these drugs. Can you like superimpose everything together so we're looking at everything in one place? And like, or can you build like an LLM model around it that could help us like answer some of those questions? I think there is a lot of simpler use cases, I think, that are there that that needs to be solved, while folks like NVIDIA, Recursion, et cetera, are like solving some of the bigger challenges with target identification and drug discovery. And that's one of the angles where, like, we at KOGNITIC and myself on this journey as well, like as I'm looking into what are going to be some of the emerging challenges or byproducts of this whole AI driven drug discovery. And I truly think that's going to open doors for a lot of data and analytics companies or SaaS platforms that might die soon of the past, to kind of like come in and have that expertise to solve some of the problems that are going to stem from AI drug discovery that's happening right now.
Yes, again, from a outsider's view, one of my favorite things about Google's Notebook LM is the fact that you can have your own model that has its blinders on and can't see everything that's out there. And so it can only see what you feed it directly, and I do love that, because then you can ask very specific questions about clients and how to potentially best serve some of the things that they want. And so I can completely understand this idea of wanting, hey, look, I just want all of anybody else that's researching the same thing all in one place, and be able to ask my very specific questions without it getting confused by other outside answers that could be there. So yeah, very
True.
interesting. So, last three questions. What inspires you?
What inspires me? Okay. I mean, I think for me, I have to say my two daughters. I have two daughters. I think every day I look at them and I build my motivation around like their eyes, and like, what kind of like a home I'm setting for them, or what kind of like a world are we creating for our children, right? So I think that inspires me quite a bit from a very personal side of things. And I think from a professional side of things, I think what inspires me is looking into some of the bold challenges that the industry is ready to take up. And I go back to the same example of AI drug discovery to say that, for hundreds of years, we've done something in a traditional way, and now the technology is going to shift it quite a bit. And we as human beings are so open-minded to it. And it's a very complex challenge to navigate through. So I think, just looking at examples of some of the companies that are doing some groundbreaking work on an everyday basis, every day, it's almost overwhelming to the extent of, what kind of work is being done on an everyday basis around like AI drug discovery and the challenges that we're taking, like digital twins and all that, what would be like a science fiction. So I think it really inspires me to see the kind of bold, unthinkable challenges that we collectively as human beings or scientists are ready to kind of like tackle, like go out there. So that really fascinates me and inspires me to, be even a small part of this whole like bigger picture of things.
Absolutely. What concerns you?
I think to some extent the AI, the ethics around it, like, sticking to the topic of AI,